My sister and I started college together, but my parents paid every penny of her tuition while telling me she has more potential. I worked 3 jobs to graduate debt-free. 4 years later, at graduation, they finally realized which daughter they had been underestimating. Hello everyone, my name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 26 years old, and the day my parents told me they would pay every penny of my younger sister's college tuition, but not mine, they didn't even pretend it was about money. Mom simply looked at me across the dinner table and said, "Emily has potential." Dad nodded. "You'll be fine on your own." I waited for one of them to smile, to tell me they were joking. Neither of them did. 4 years later, those same parents sat inside my university's graduation auditorium. They came expecting to celebrate one successful daughter. Instead, they watched the entire faculty stand and applaud the daughter they'd spent 4 years telling wasn't worth investing in. Looking back, Emily and I had never really been treated as equals. She was only 18 months younger than me, close enough in age that people constantly compared us. Emily was outgoing, confident, the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately become everyone's favorite. I was quieter. I liked books more than parties, numbers more than gossip. Whenever relatives visited, Mom always introduced Emily first. "This one's going to do something incredible." Then she'd point at me, "And Hannah is so dependable." At first, I thought dependable was a compliment. Eventually, I realized it meant people expected me to survive without help. Throughout high school, Emily became the family star. Every B+ became proof she was brilliant. Every soccer goal deserved a celebration. Every small accomplishment became family news. Meanwhile, I graduated near the top of my class, won several academic awards, worked weekends at a grocery store. Nobody ignored my achievements. They simply treated them as expected. The summer before college, both of us received acceptance letters. Different universities, same state, same week. Emily screamed so loudly that Mom started crying. Dad opened expensive champagne. The whole family celebrated. 2 days later, my acceptance letter arrived. Mom hugged me. Dad smiled, then immediately asked, "So, have you looked into student loans?" I frowned. "What?" He looked confused. "For tuition." I thought, "You were helping both of us." Mom exchanged a glance with Dad, then quietly said, "We've discussed this. We can only fully support one education." I stared at them. "You've known this for months. Why didn't you tell me?" Dad sighed. "Hannah, Emily's degree has more upside." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What about mine?" Mom reached across the table. "You'll be okay. You're responsible. She has potential. You don't need as much help." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else they ever said. Not because they refused to pay, because they had already decided what I was capable of becoming. That night, I filled out scholarship applications until nearly 3 in the morning. By the end of the summer, I'd earned enough grants to cover part of my tuition. The rest, I covered myself. Freshman year, I worked mornings at the campus coffee shop, afternoons attending lectures, evenings tutoring accounting students, weekends stocking shelves at a bookstore. Most nights, I slept less than 5 hours. Emily didn't need to work. Our parents paid her tuition, apartment, meal plan, books, gas, spending money. Every Sunday, Mom mailed her homemade meals. Every month, Dad deposited extra money into her account. When I visited home, Mom always asked, "How's Emily doing?" Sometimes, she remembered to ask me too. One Thanksgiving, Dad looked around the table proudly. "Our future lawyer." He smiled at Emily, then looked at me. "And Hannah's still working herself to death." Everyone laughed. I smiled politely. Nobody knew I'd just been named to the dean's list for the 3rd consecutive semester. Nobody had asked. During sophomore year, Emily began struggling academically. She changed majors, then changed again. She called Mom crying almost every week. Our parents immediately drove 3 hours to help. Meanwhile, when I caught the flu during finals week, I spent 3 days alone in my dorm room. The only person who checked on me regularly was my roommate. Strangely, I stopped feeling angry. Instead, I became focused. Every scholarship mattered. Every grade mattered. Every internship mattered. Junior year, I landed a paid internship with one of the largest consulting firms in Chicago. That single opportunity changed everything. Senior year, the company quietly offered me a full-time position after graduation. I accepted. The salary was higher than anything I'd imagined earning at 22. I didn't tell my parents, not because I wanted revenge, because after 4 years, I'd stopped chasing their approval. 2 weeks before graduation, an email arrived from the university president. At first, I assumed it was another graduation reminder. Instead, it began with one sentence. Congratulations. The faculty has unanimously selected you as this year's student commencement speaker. I read the email 4 times before believing it. Out of nearly 4,000 graduating students, they had chosen me. I accepted immediately. The university requested that the announcement remain confidential until graduation day, so I said nothing, not even to Emily. Graduation weekend finally arrived. Mom and Dad drove in wearing shirts, printed with my sister's university logo. Mom smiled proudly. I can't believe Emily made it. I quietly nodded. Me too. As we walked toward the auditorium, Dad looked around. This should be a nice ceremony. I wonder who they picked for the student speaker. I smiled. So do I. Inside, thousands of families filled the seats. The orchestra finished playing. The university president walked onto the stage, then stepped toward the microphone. He smiled warmly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce this year's commencement speaker. My parents looked toward the stage, waiting to hear someone else's name. Sometimes, the people who underestimate your future are the ones who never bothered to notice how hard you were working in the present. As my parents settled into their seats, expecting to celebrate only one successful daughter, they had no idea the very next name announced would change everything they thought they knew about me. The university president smiled at the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce this year's student commencement speaker. He unfolded a card. This student graduated with highest honors, completed 3 internships, maintained a perfect academic record while working multiple jobs, and has accepted a leadership position with one of the nation's top consulting firms. My parents smiled politely. Mom whispered, I wonder who it is. Then, the president spoke my name. Please welcome Hannah Brooks. The entire auditorium erupted into applause. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad froze. Emily slowly turned toward them. Hio, did you know? Neither of them answered. I walked onto the stage, accepted the microphone, looked out across thousands of faces. For one brief moment, my eyes found my parents. Dad looked completely stunned. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. Then I began. I've been asked many times what success looks like. I used to think success meant having people believe in you. But over the last 4 years, I learned something different. Sometimes, the greatest gift life gives you isn't unlimited support. It's discovering what you're capable of building when nobody expects anything from you. The audience became completely silent. I worked before sunrise. I studied after midnight. I missed parties. I missed vacations. I missed countless opportunities to take the easy path. But every sacrifice taught me something. Nobody can take away work you've already done. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. When I finished, every graduate stood. Then, so did the faculty. The standing ovation wasn't for me alone. It was for every student who had fought to get there. As I walked off the stage, the dean quietly handed me an envelope. Inside was another surprise. The university had selected me for its Distinguished Graduate Award. It included a research grant and recognition for academic excellence and community leadership. I smiled, then returned to my seat. The ceremony continued. After graduation, families gathered outside. Photographs, flowers, tears, laughter. I was talking with my internship supervisor when I heard someone call my name. Hannah. I turned. Mom stood there crying. Dad looked as though he had aged 10 years. Neither of them spoke immediately. Finally, Mom whispered, we didn't know. I smiled politely. I know. Dad looked down. You were the commencement speaker. Yes. You graduated first in your class. Yes. You already have a job. I accepted it months ago. He closed his eyes. We had no idea. No. You never asked. Silence. Emily stepped forward. I knew you were doing well. I just didn't know. Or this well. I smiled at her. Neither did Mom and Dad. Mom wiped away tears. Hannah, we're so proud of you. Those words should have meant everything. Instead, they felt strangely empty. Not because they weren't sincere, because they had arrived 4 years too late. Dad quietly asked, why didn't you tell us? I answered honestly. I spent years trying. Eventually, I stopped needing your approval. Just then, my future employer walked over. Hannah, he smiled warmly and shook my hand. We're excited to have you. He turned toward my parents. You must be incredibly proud. Your daughter has been one of the most impressive candidates we've interviewed in years. He laughed. Our partners were competing to recruit her. Mom smiled weakly. She never told us. He looked surprised. Really? Then he walked away. Dad stared after him. I always thought Emily had the brighter future. Emily quietly interrupted. Dad, stop. She looked at me. For years, I let you carry the comparison. I never told them to stop. I'm sorry, I hugged her. I know, you were never the problem. She cried. So were you. For the first time in years, we weren't competing, we were simply sisters. Dad reached into his wallet, pulled out an old photograph. It showed Emily and me on our first day of kindergarten. He looked at it for several seconds. I spent all these years looking at one daughter, while the other was quietly becoming extraordinary. I gently placed my hand on his arm. I was always extraordinary. You just couldn't see it. He nodded slowly. I know that now. Epilogue? Soft piano becomes lighter, carrying peace instead of regret. It's been 5 years since graduation. The consulting job became a career I truly love. Eventually, I became a partner in the firm. I also established a scholarship fund at my university. Every year, it helps students who work while earning their degrees, because I know exactly what those long nights feel like. Emily eventually finished law school after finding the path that truly suited her. Today, we're closer than we've ever been, not because we pretend the past didn't happen, because we finally stopped letting comparisons define us. My parents changed too, not overnight, but gradually. They stopped talking about potential. They started talking about effort. And every graduation season, Dad volunteers at local scholarship events. Whenever parents ask him for advice, he always gives the same answer. Never decide too early which child is going to surprise you. My thoughts. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't paying my own tuition. It was believing I was worth investing in when the people closest to me didn't. Potential isn't something parents get to assign. It's something people discover through perseverance, discipline, and opportunity. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is quietly doing the hardest work. And sometimes, the greatest graduation isn't walking across a stage. It's graduating from the need to prove your worth to people who never took the time to see it.